Hey friends, this is our monthly video for December 2023, and first let me just apologize for this being a bit behind this month. That's entirely on me. We try to have these videos for you the first week of each month, and I've just fallen behind the past couple of weeks. I had a couple bits of illness last week, and so here I am. So here we are at the end of the year, and as we approach the end of each year, we want to encourage you to begin thinking about setting aside some time to review this past year, to bring this year into some prayer and reflection, and to look with some intentionality on how God might be inviting you to pay attention to His invitations within our shared rule of life in the new year. And as we do this work of reflecting on the past year, I want us to think through where you have felt consolation this past year and where you have perhaps moved through a season of desolation. So what is the work that God has been doing in you through this past year? Recognizing that sometimes God's work in us is through a season of consolation, and sometimes there is real work that God is doing in us in a season of desolation, where maybe we've struggled a little bit. And specifically, what are some of the intentional ways that you have been leaning into our shared rule of life? What are some of the invitations that you've experienced? And as you do this reflection on 2023, one of the questions I'd like for you to hold is a question of how God might be inviting you into our rule of life into 2024. Specifically, God, how are you inviting me to live into our shared rule of life? Maybe just take a few days to prayerfully work through the rhythms and commitments within our rule of life, and ask God to remind you of where you felt some grace this past year and where you might be sensing an invitation in this next year. So friends, you don't need to have a plan for practicing every commitment in the new year, but maybe you could at least have a sense of which commitments God might be drawing you into. So one of the things that we want to remind you about, specifically about your novitiate experience, is that these monthly teachings and conversations each month within your formation group is meant to be planting seeds in you that are meant to be cultivated eventually into what we've referred to as a customary. So a customary, in its final form, is the way that you want to live out our rule of life, like the particulars. So for example, we have this rhythm of prayer that we're inviting you into in our rule of life, and within that rhythm of prayer, we're asking you to practice a midday and an evening prayer. That's in our rule. But it's your customary, it's your personalized articulation of our rule of life that is meant to say for you what that rhythm of prayer is meant to be. So our commitment to simplicity, for example, those four categories of food, clothing, technology, and possessions, what a customary will do, which eventually you will write as part of your discernment of vows process at the end of your novitiate, the customary will get more particular about how you are planning on living into a simple relationship with these four things, and what you feel invited towards when you notice one or more of these areas becoming a bit more complex. So for example, as I've been working on my own customary, I have some rhythms for fasting and some particular constraints around alcohol consumption, because I just know that in the past, this has been a place where I have run to in times of stress. And as I get older, I know that it impacts my sleep. Really practical things like this, that in the end, I just realize and I know that this practice of consuming a drink in the end of my day isn't actually leading me to where I know that God is wanting me to go and where God is inviting me to live. So friends, as we continue to build out our process of formation, we're leading you towards something. We're leading you towards a season of discernment where you will look more closely at your own felt sense of invitation to keep living in this way, leaning together alongside others in a shared rule of life, and eventually we'll have you develop a customized way of living into our rhythms and commitments. This is going to be your customary. So some of you have been a novice for 12 to 18 months now, and some of you are just beginning. You just finished up postulancy in the middle of this year, and you still have a course of study ahead of you and maybe even the spiritual exercises. We just want to take a minute here at the end of the year to remind you of where all of this is headed and to encourage you as you reflect back on 2023 to just jot down a few things that God has led you towards this past year and to look with some anticipation about how God is inviting you into our rhythms and commitments in the year ahead. So is there anything that you're feeling drawn to within our 4 rhythms of rest, prayer, bodily labor, and study? This is actually a question that we asked you in the first few months of postulancy. And are there any specific commitments that you would like to explore more deeply this year as you think about your life with Jesus? So friends, we look forward to another year with you. And as always, if you feel like you need a little bit more guidance or you feel like you're losing the thread a bit with the work that we're doing together, friends, don't hesitate to reach out. We'd love to make sure that you feel supported in the work that we're doing together. Okay, much love and grace to you.